Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you certainly know that this is my deep dive into a wonderful deck called the Egyptian Tarot by C.C. Zane and the Brotherhood of Light. And I've been doing this deep dive since the since January 1st, actually, since January 1st. And if you have been following along with me, you also know that I have missed 2 days of videos because of work at this camp. I've been having night classes. We've been doing night rehearsals and a night performance for the last 2 days. And I've had classes during the day. I just haven't had time to prepare for a video like this for you. So let me tell you what I usually do, and then let me tell you what I did for the last couple days. Usually, at the end of the day, before I go to bed, I shuffle my mass market color version of the Egyptian Tarot, and I pull a card from that, because that is a deck that is readily available, and I can riffle shuffle it to my heart's content and not worry about it. So I pull my daily card, draw a card, thinking of the question, what would I most benefit from giving my attention to in the following day? Pull the card, and then I pull the matching card from my very out of print charcoal gray and white deck of the same Egyptian Tarot, and I look at them and I notice the differences. There are differences, some small, some great. And then I ask for help from my helper deck. When I do a deep dive these days, well, I've only done 2, but when I do a deep dive, I usually get help from a deck that I'm more familiar with to help me unpack the daily draw from the new deck for me. So my helper deck for this one is the Tarot of the Holy Light by Christine Payne-Towler, the beautiful Christine Payne-Towler, the deeply wise, knowledgeable, esoterically brilliant, hermetically astute creator, Christine Payne-Towler. And so I use that deck to do a 3-card spread to help me unpack the daily draw. The first card is the significance of the card for me for the next day. The second card is the challenge, either positive or negative, depending on the card. And the third is advice. And so then I go to bed, I wake up, and I live my day. And at the end of the day, usually I will analyze the cards more carefully and see how the meanings, how the significances of those cards either revealed themselves to me during the day, or maybe that I still need to do a little bit more reflection, a little bit more soul searching, as it were. And then I repeat the cycle, wash, rinse, repeat. However, like I said, for the last 2 days, I was not able to film a video, and I knew I wouldn't be able to film a video. So at the end of the last video, I mentioned that. And so at the end of that video, I pulled a card, I pulled my series, my daily draw, and my 3 helper cards, and I used those 3 to carry me over the next 2 days until now. So that's how I decided to work with them. There were a couple of times during the day that I thought, I wonder if I have enough time to perhaps film a really short video to upload for that day, and I'm glad I didn't, because of the cards that I got from my last daily draw and from the helper cards, the 3-card spread. And I'll get to them in just a moment. So that's what I did. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. The significance, the daily draw, which actually carried over for a few days, and then the 3-card spread, which helped me unpack that one. So here is the daily draw from basically 3 days ago. Let's take a look. Were you surprised? Were you shocked and astounded? Were you thinking to yourself, what the heck? Is this a new video or not? Friends, this is a new video, and yes, I got the 9 of Swords yet again, twice in a row. I swear to God, I shuffled the deck. I put it in, randomly shuffled the deck just as I always shuffle, and yes, 2 days in a row, I got the 9 of Swords. So the 9 of Swords not only was the last video, the card of the day for the last video before I took my pause, it also carried me over in my next daily draw for the next 3 days. So that was a very significant card for me during this time. And perhaps you will understand more fully when we get to the end of this video. So follow along. Here are those cards yet again. We've got the 3 triangles formed by the 3 sets of swords. The triangles pointing up towards the heavens, which I truly adore. We've got the star constellations. Now, they're placed a little bit differently, right? We have the constellation here in the color here, and then in the black and white, it's up there at the top. The number of stars is different, but basically they're the same constellation. They're the constellation of the Corona Borealis. And you can also see that we have up here, we have what? The Taurus decanate of Virgo. At the bottom, we see the planet is Venus, because Venus is Taurus is the domicile of Venus. So we have all of that information telling us what? Telling us, as I said the last video, that the 9 of Swords points to the Taurus decanate of Virgo and its sub-ruler, Venus, from which the fixed aspect of mutable Earth, vital attributes enter our world. So Venus is radiating through the Tauran decanate of Virgo, through the house of Virgo, into our lives, into our charts, into the question that is being asked of the cards that day. Or at that time, I should say, at that time. So we've got Venus, Virgo, which if you know me, you know I confuse all of the time, and I have to be really careful. We've got Virgo is the sign and the planet Venus. And we got the Corona Borealis. Now, I've mentioned the Corona Borealis a few times already because this 9 of Swords seems to be stalking me during this deep dive. So the Corona Borealis was a gift from Dionysus to Ariadne. Ariadne being the one who helped Theseus defeat the Minotaur by giving him the thread of Ariadne, the thread that he took with him into the labyrinth, and then was able to follow back out after he slew the Minotaur. And Theseus and Ariadne were kind of hot on each other for a while, but then Theseus apparently abandons her on this island, and there are several explanations for this abandonment, whether it was a god's intervention early on, or Theseus's noticing the god's interest and saying, I'm not going to touch this hot potato, or whether Theseus just got tired of her and left her on this island. But he leaves her on the island of Naxos, and Dionysus comes down and offers Ariadne this corona, this laurel wreath. And then this laurel wreath gets lifted up into the sky as a group of stars, and we have the constellation Corona Borealis. So it's that idea perhaps of the gifting of the gods to one who is somehow abandoned or rejected or left behind, maybe. But still there's an idea of the laurel wreath there, right? And so, upright, the 9 of Swords, again, we have Venus beaming through Tauran Virgo. According to the guidebooks, it's the card of renunciation, yes, but also perfectionism in relationships. Now, perfectionism, wanting to get things done, that Virgo energy, that Virgo desire. Feeling you know better, which could be a Tauran thing. Yeah, Venus beaming through Taurus. Quarrels can lead to animosity. Rather than leading to reconciliation, the quarrel can escalate to animosity, which is a breakup, which is odd because Venus is the one beaming, but here, beaming through the aspect of Virgo, her joining desires seem to get potentially disrupted. The need for careful treatment of others, because there is the potential of that, of those quarrels escalating and feelings being hurt. Also the idea that our fixed attitudes, a Tauran thing, right? Venus going through Taurus, there's a lot of fixedness to the Tauran because it's a fixed sign. The Tauran attributes. So our fixed attitudes can limit our achievement here. And arguments can drain our energy. And yet, because Venus is the planet of love, love can still overcome it all. So that is where I was asked to place my attention on these potential conflicts, but that love would be the key, right? Love will find a way, we say, right? Love will find a way. There's that song. Right now, the tune's not coming to my head, but love will find a way. So that was interesting. And you saw that Corona Borealis that I mentioned. I've shown you pictures of it before. I just showed you a picture of it before. So that's this card. And I think it was accurate. Accurate's not the word I'm reaching for. I think it was poignant. I think it was a good, not warning, not be danger, Will Roger Robinson, danger, not a warning sign, but okay, let's go with warning sign because nothing else is coming to mind. It was a good warning. It was a good, just be careful. Things could go awry and they don't have to kind of message to be repeating for me, especially at this time for me during the camp. And so we go to the unpacking of that Nine of Swords, which is different every time we unpack it. And so let me show you those three unpacking cards right now. So you saw that I got from left to right, the Magus, the Magician, the Magus reversed. And then we had two cups right after each other. Yeah? In reverse order, in reverse order for this deck. Now, in this deck, the suits, the courts start with the king, they'll go to the queen, then go to the knight, then go to the cup, the page. So in reverse order from the order presented in the book, but still an order, right? Then we got the Page of Cups and then the Knight of Cups. Now, the reason why the page is at the end is because the page serves the queen and is also instead of being one zodiacal sign for the element, here, the element of water, this is the season. Now, the pages are the season, and this is the season of summer, which we'll get to in just a moment. So we had, again, the Magus reversed, the Page of Cups upright, and then the Knight of Cups upright. Interesting spread. Would have preferred the Magus to have been upright as well. We have had the Magus upright a few days ago, but he's reversed here. But that seemed to be appropriate considering that it was with the Nine of Swords in this case. So what is the Magus? Let me show it to the Magus to you upright again, just in case you don't recall. And I'm just scanning this because I don't have an image in front of me to refer to as I hold this up to you. We've got the Magus, a beautiful figure. Beautiful, beautiful figure to me, holding up two Cardusiuses. Yeah, the stick with the snakes, the sticks with the snakes. And above the crowned head of the Magus, we've got the divine triangle above, radiant in gold. At the feet of the Magus, we've got this red, very, very root chakra color of fire and passion, perhaps, with gold, right? There's gold down there as well. The Magus is standing very firmly on a path-looking thing, reminding me of the Magus in the Thoth deck by Lady Frida Harris. Although that Magus seems to be walking like a tightrope of energy, but still, that idea of walking on a path, this Magus is standing very securely on that path. And below that, we've got these wings, which is appropriate because this is a card of the air. Now, the association for the Magus in this deck is air, the element of air. And of course, the wings are below the feet of the Magus. The Magus himself has wings. The Magus has the sun in the sacral chakra. It's just a beautiful card. And also, do you notice, there's the zodiac behind? But do you notice that on the side of the path in red and orange, does that look like wings to you as well? That always reminds me of wings when I see this. Now, they're the very white wings down here at the bottom. There are the wings on the back of the Magus. But here on the red path, there are these two geometrically shaped things that also remind me of wings. So I get a lot of air, these fiery wings coming off of the red path, but also the white wings above and below. Just a gorgeous deck. Oh, and there are wings on the triangle. I forgot to mention that. Even the triangle has wings. Everybody's got wings. All God's children got wings. Love this card. And I also love the meanings of it. Yeah, when it's upright, the Magus is imagination of one's genius and uniqueness. One is imaginative and powerful because our imagination is our genius. Our imagination creates our uniqueness. And the Magus is the seeker of hidden truths. As the Magus enters through from Keter, from the monad, from the divine, making their first appearance into the physical, still remembering and feeling the connection to the divine as we begin the journey into a life in the physical. So as we enter the physical realm, we're seeking out these hidden truths that we've got this whole universe of treasures to explore, right? And to interact with and to create and all of those things. Now in reverse, the Magus is something, it's not different, but we've got a little bit of another caution sign. Reversed, we want to watch out for things like distortion, pretense, egoic fantasy. So our imagination, which is our superpower, we want to make sure that it is our pure imagination and not our ego trying to imagine something that will bolster itself up rather than, and as that will bolster the ego's self up rather than an imaginative creation that is pure and flows from the eternal nature that we are, co-creating these physical bodies that we are interacting with the rest of the physical universe in. Does that make sense? So there's that pure, naive, untainted, loving, joyful, well and aware imagination that creates beauty and interest and fabulousness in the universe. But there's also, our ego has a way of manipulating our perception and manipulating what we think as our imagination to create false things that will inflate it, will allow for ego inflation. So we want to be careful of that. Be careful of pretense. Be careful of our egoic distortions. Because it's easy to become fooled about what is actually possible in the present. Now, in truth, I firmly believe, and I assume probably you do too, that anything that we can imagine is possible in the physical realm, in the physical universe. However, we need to evolve into the beings that will be able to experience those things for the most part. Until we have evolved into the beings who can naturally, easily move in the direction of and attract those manifestations into our lives, they're still going to be a little ways off. Or when they do manifest, they're not going to be quite as developed as we had imagined. There's going to be less perfection, or what we think of as imperfection. And that what we perceive as imperfection can also be our own misunderstanding, right? Because we can't really understand the fullness of this universe and what we really want. Now, our eternal natures know what we really want so much more clearly than we do in these human gelatinous brains that we use to think in these physical bodies. So some of that distortion or misperception, or what we notice and think of as imperfection, is actually perfection, but we feel it's imperfection because the thing that we imagined doesn't match that. But our imaginations are also limited, right? So what actually appears is perfect for us at that moment. It feels imperfect because of several reasons. One, we haven't evolved to the point that we can manifest what we really think is perfection. Or two, our imaginations aren't broad enough to really understand what is perfect. And so this manifestation doesn't match what we have created, but it is perfect. Whatever is manifested is perfect at that moment of time and space. So there's always a little bit of a mismatch, and that's something for us to be aware of and not throw our hands up in the air and say, well, this isn't right. This isn't what I imagined. What the hell is going on here? You see? So another thing to keep in mind when this card is reversed is it's necessary for us to keep our balance. You see, this Magus is very well balanced on his path, appearing to be much more balanced than, again, the Magus in the Thoth deck painted by Lady Frida Harris. So we want to keep our balance and harmonize divergent elements. Things that seem to be at odds, we want to feel our way into harmonizing them with an open mind and reach for the and modes of inclusivity rather than this or that, excluding this or excluding that, choosing one over the other. This card is asking us to reach for the and mode of inclusivity, which is ended up being very important for me over the last 3 days. And so that was the unpacking of this nineness here, right? This Nine of Swords, which is an earth suit, we've discussed this a few times already, was unpacked by this Magus reversed. And so what is the challenge for me? This seems like a positive challenge, right? The Page of Cups for summer. Beautiful card. Beautiful little page there. Well, large page. Not so young, right? The pages in this deck are generally not as young as we often expect from a page in, for example, a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. The drawings by Pamela Coleman Smith, she has the pages being very young beings. And even the pages in a lot of Terre de Basset decks are also very young humans. Sometimes male, sometimes female. Sometimes both. Sometimes neither. So, usually young. This page does not seem so young to me. We've got the water pouring out of the eye in the sky. Yeah, we've got the divine eye peering into the world through a ring of clouds, and water pouring forth to feed, to nourish this page. Now this page is standing ankle deep in a pool of water with the moon down there, the sun above. Also another moon above too. Beautiful flowers around the page. The page seems very happy, content in their summertime, because this is the page of summer. This is the page of the summer season. And it points to someone who is emotionally available, expressive, and honest. This page serves the Queen of Cups, right? And he can anticipate people's needs. He's got a bit of the psychic about him. He's got the intuitive nature of this page of Cups. And this page also stays informed. He doesn't rely, he, she, they don't rely merely on their intuition or their psychic ability. They gather information to keep on top of what's happening around them. And they have mostly an indoor skill set. Music, literature, education, they teach. And that is what's most important to the Page of Cups. And again, they're sensitive, right? They can read people they're familiar with, but also people that they're unfamiliar with. They can read the people in the room, even if they've never really met them before, which is very helpful for the queen. Now, they're poetic, they're mystical, they're emotionally open. So this is what I was being asked to reach for, I think. The challenge for me was to become the Page of Cups. And so, what is the advice? Well, the advice was to perhaps start from the Knight of Cups, which is Pisces, which is my moon sign. Yeah, this to start with the Knight, to start with the Knight of Cups. The planet is Jupiter, so the Knight of Cups points to Pisces, which is the decadent of Jupiter, from which these mutable water vital attributes enter our world. Piscean, mutable, changeable, getting ready for the next cycle, the very end of the zodiac, getting ready to clean up what came before so that we can move into Aries again. And this Knight of Cups is an overseer, looks over the realm, looks over people around them, and defends the peace of the realm. But this knight is not an overachiever. This knight is not competing for higher rank or prestige. This knight wants to keep the peace, wants everything to be calm so that we can be open and emotionally available and explore our inner knowledge and explore our insights and explore music and literature. This is a poetic knight. Yeah? He rides out to minister to his community. He leans into wisdom. He leans into courtly culture, music, poetry, right? Troubadours. He leans into refinement, kindness, empathy. He, she, they are all of these things. And he, she, they also have a mystical side as well that adds to the allure for them, to the allure to them for others. His inner mystic is attractive to people around him. So, a good advice, I think, for me, because if I could do that, then perhaps I could come closer to the challenge of becoming the Page of Cups. And you're thinking, well, isn't that going backwards? Not necessarily. Now, the Page of Cups is the summer sign, right? It's the summer of Cancer and Leo together in the moon in her place, the sun in his place, or the moon in his place, the sun in her place, radiating that joy and reflecting that openness of growth of summer. So all of those things were possible for me, even under the significance of these potential conflicts, perhaps, potential quarrels, potential feeling I know better, potential fixed attitudes which would limit things, but still could be overcome by love. And so I think that's another reason for these being my advice, and the challenge was to be that love, to embody that love in some sense, as much as I possibly can. Being aware that I don't want to trick myself. I don't want to trick myself into these false illusions of what the perfect is with this, because that would have, I think, triggered the negative aspect of this, of the Nine of Swords. So if I went in there with these false expectations of what perfection really is, and reality didn't match up with this perfection that I was thinking of, then it would be easy for me to slip into becoming fixed, argumentative. My perfectionism could come rising up to the surface with all of its ugliness, right? So, what's it all about? So what is it all about? Well, for the last 3 days, let me tell you what happened. Let me working backwards. So after I did my last video, which was on a Sunday night, it's Wednesday now, on a Sunday night, I pulled these cards, and then Monday, I taught classes all day and we rehearsed the play. And there were things that I wanted to work with the kids on, and I tried to work with them on, but we didn't get as much accomplished as I had hoped. But I didn't want to wear them out because that night we were going to have a dress rehearsal. Well, a kind of dress rehearsal. It wasn't really a dress rehearsal. Very late, well, for them, well, for me, very late at night now, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, that's the time. And from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m., we were supposed to see 10 stories from 10 different classes on stage. And there's just not enough time for all that. So we saw the first 2 stories from almost all the way through, which were the middle school stories first. I'm working with the elementary school students. And after those 2, or maybe there were 3 stories, seeing almost all of them, and then we had a person there helping us, a third eye, who would give notes and say, well, you could try this, you could try that, you could try that. And this person's ideas were very interesting and valuable, I think, and helpful, but giving all of that information made us start running behind really, really early. And so they decided that, okay, for the rest of the stories, we'll only watch the first 5 minutes or 6 minutes of the story and then give notes and move on, and give notes and move on, and give notes and move on. So we really didn't get a chance to do a full run through of any of the stories for the elementary school students, which is unfortunate because they're probably the ones that needed it the most. But okay, so like I said, my perfectionism, beware perfectionism, beware false imagining what should be happening. Be as supportive as I could. Become the Knight of Cups who ministers to those around. And I tried to do that as much as I could. Yeah, I went and I finished making the props for one of my classes. I helped other people set up their props. In between my classes, when I was down in the theater area, the theater, the building with the theater was far, far away from where my actual classroom building is. It's about a 5 or 6 minute walk between buildings. So, okay, so it's not that far away. I get it. But still, in this cold winter, it's a long walk. And it's been really cold this week. The first 2 weeks, the cold was very mild comparatively. This week, we've been in negative degrees Celsius. Not negative degrees Fahrenheit, but negative degrees Celsius. So it's been cold here. Now the ice is really, really hard on the ground. So anyway, so I stayed down there in the building, and between my class times when I had break time, I went and I checked the mics, and I tried to add a second mic there for us, and I tried taping down that new mic cable, and I tried doing a couple of things to help make things easier for us that evening. So that was my attempt at being a Knight of Cups that day. So we did the rehearsal. My classes were the very, very last ones. They did their stories a little bit, and they were okay. So the next day, we had classes again, and the classes would be rehearsals. And so for those rehearsal days, those additional rehearsals, I tried to help the students understand the notes that the person who was giving them notes the previous night, help them to understand them and try and work them in to their performance, which I think I was able to do. However, they aren't actors. They revert back to the way that they did things before at the drop of a dime. And there wasn't that much time to really re-rehearse. And so we got as improved as we could, but there were also some wrenches that got thrown into the works. One of my major characters in one of my stories, his voice had started changing about 2 nights before, and that day his voice was completely gone. His puberty has hit with a vengeance, and his voice was cracking and dropping, and had lost all of its power. The same play, the same story, one of the other major characters, there were like 3 major characters in that story. One of them, their voice was changing. One of them woke up with a really sore throat. And so talking was painful for her. And I was like, oh my God. But we got through rehearsals. I told him not to push it. I told her not to push it, but to try and to speak loudly when we did the performance at night, and to drink hot water and take care of yourself. And if you need to, go see the nurse. We don't want to damage your voice. So then we had dinner, we got together, we did the performance, and frankly, my teams were not that good. We're not really that good. We couldn't really hear them. The mics at the front of the stage weren't picking them up well enough. They weren't projecting well enough. I reminded them to turn and face the audience as much as possible, and a lot of the time they forgot all of that. So there were a lot of things that we had worked on and we practiced, and they had forgotten, and they went back to their old ways of doing things, which is unsurprising, especially for untrained actors, which they are. They're not trained actors, and they're young. And so it was okay, but I was really disappointed for a while, but I did not express that disappointment. I watched my disappointment. If that makes sense. I watched my disappointment, and I wanted to be sure that it did not radiate out over all of my group, which is okay, because after they performed, they went back to their seats, and I was continued to clap for the other students telling their stories, and then the kids all left before I could talk to them, so they didn't get much interaction from me that night. The next day, today, we had classes today, and so the first thing I wanted to say, when I met them, I wanted to ask them how they felt. I did ask them how they felt about the previous night. I know they said, we're not happy. I said, why are you not happy? Well, we didn't win. I know you didn't win, but how do you feel? Do you feel you did well? And then I said, but I think you did well. I think you did really well. I think you did your best, and I was proud of you. Which I am. I really am. I was disappointed that night because there were so many things we had worked out and we had fixed, and then those things that we had fixed were just gone. But still, it wasn't about winning. I just wanted them to do the best that they possibly could, and they really didn't do the best that they possibly could. And yet, the next day, I wanted to be sure that they knew that I was proud of them, and I am proud of them, because this is a very difficult thing that we were asking them to do, and they did it. They bloody did it. So there you go, right? And then I did something really interesting, which I'd been thinking to myself, should I, shouldn't I, I don't know. I pulled out my tarot cards. I brought 4 decks of tarot cards, which I thought would be fair. One, if they got damaged, I wouldn't die. I could get copies of them again. I could replace them. I did not take any of my irreplaceable decks. So I took the Mons Tarot. I don't know if you know any of these decks, but I took the Mons Tarot. I took the Deviant Moon, just because I knew that there would be some perhaps boys that might like the creepiness of the Deviant Moon Tarot. I took the Ancestral Path Tarot, which had the most very human-like figures in it, what they would be used to seeing as people doing things in normal everyday life. But with a diversity of people. Yeah, there are Native Americans, there are African people, there are Asian people, there are European people. So a diversity of times, but also very normal human-looking people doing fairly normal human-looking things. And then I had something called the Heartful Spirit Tarot, which is all very abstract spirit shapes in pastel colors, and I thought that would be the imaginative deck. So I had the creepy deck, which I would assume that maybe the boys might have liked better. And I fully admit that is very, very prejudiced on my part. It's very prejudiced, and it turns out that no, it wasn't the boys who liked that the most. It was very often the girls who liked that one the most. So prejudice recognized and bias recognized and eliminated. yeah, so what did I do? I had them get into groups, and I had them decide on which deck they're going to choose from. And then I went to their table with one of the decks, and I shuffled the deck, They were so impressed with my ability to shuffle. Believe it or not, if you've seen me shuffle cards on my channel, you know that I am not an excellent card shuffler. But for them, that was like, ooh, you should work at a casino. So I shuffled the decks, and I spread them out like a fan on the table, and I had them pick 5 cards. And we have been studying structure of story in a very simple, rudimentary way. We learned exposition, we learned inclining action, the thing that is a build up, the climax, the declining action, which is the descent after the climax, and then a satisfying conclusion. So they picked 1 card for each one of those. I had them line up the cards as they saw fit that would make the best story, and then create a story from those 5 cards. And so I was a little bit worried of, I don't know, tarot, would their parents freak out if they knew that they were using tarot cards? But I picked the least tarot-looking decks that I could find. The creepy, very different from like a Pamela Coleman Smith or Tarot de Marseille. So they did that. They picked their 5 cards. I took the rest of the deck away, and then they started writing their stories. And then they seemed to, except for one team, almost all of them, after a little bit, well, how do I do this? What do I do? What is this all about? And then they started doing it, and then they started writing. Most of them, once they started getting into it, they got into it. They started writing and figuring it out, and it was good to see. There was one team that had a lot of resistance, not because it was tarot, it's just because, well, what am I supposed to do? What's the right way to do this? And so I talked them through about which card do you think looks like the beginning of a story? Which card looks like the end of a story? Okay, so now you've got 3 more cards. What order looks like the most natural to get from here to here? And so after a couple of tries but I don't know, then they finally started, and they went on a roll. So today was all about preparation. What I'm going to do tomorrow is I'm going to have them present their stories and show the cards that they had picked. I took photos of them, show the cards on the TV screen, the TV monitor in the class, so that we can see the cards and hear the story and see how they relate. An unpacking of tarot by these kids. And then there were a couple of kids. There was one kid who gave the idea to the others that, oh, this is tarot. So he came up to me and said, with these 2 cards, and said, what do these cards mean? I said, well, you think of the meaning. It's, no, what is tarot? What does it mean? So I gave them like little mini readings for what these 2 cards might have meant if they had come up in a reading together. So that there was another girl who came up, saw him doing it, said, well, what about these 2 cards? And then he came back up with his cards again and said, what did you say again? I said, well, which order do you want them to be? If it was like this, it could be one meaning. If it was like this, it could be another. So that was an interesting thing, right? So I got to use my my little inner mystic during the classes today as well, and reach for that and be emotionally open. I tried to be emotionally open to all of the positive stuff that I was feeling, and not overwhelm them with my inner perfectionist. And so I think that these cards for me, for these last 3 days, were helpful and appropriate and useful and yay, bravo, good stuff, right? What do you think? Does that make sense? So friends, that was for the last 3 days. Starting tonight, I'm going to get back on my daily cycle. So stick with me. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and hit the alarm bell so you get notifications of when I upload videos. I am going to get back on a daily video roll until the new moon in February. And hit the thumbs up button if you haven't already, please. It would help the channel. It brings more eyes to the channel. And comment below. I would really love to hear from you. What do you think? I'm kind of excited about this draw because for the last 3 days, it really did seem really important and appropriate. And these last 3 days have been a very obvious arc of development for me. Yeah, the rehearsal, the performance, and then the aftermath, and then the playing with tarot. That was all so interesting and exciting and fun for me as well. And so comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want a reading from me, a little bit more of an upgrade from what the reading I gave to my students today, my email address is below. Give me an email. Send me an email to thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. We'll get you a reading. If you want to get these decks, not the ones I mentioned before, not the Deviant Moon, those are different links, but if you want to get the beautiful deck by Christine Payne-Towler, The Tarot of the Holy Light, I have a link in the description box below. A very beautiful deck, a deck that will challenge and will help you grow as a reader if you haven't already started working with this. Or if you want the color version, the modern version, the mass market version, there's a link to an Amazon page below. Yeah, reasonable price, readily available. I would suggest trying this deck out as well. Yes, this deck is not a scenic deck. It is a pip deck. It's not Tarot de Marseille. It's a pip deck. It's got just the elements and the constellations on the small cards. But that's a good thing. It's a good thing to practice with and learn how to read if you don't know already. So friends, there we are. Here we are at the end of the video. And I'm so grateful for you to be joining me again, and hopefully to continue on with me till the end of the deep dive. So friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.